Wolf back. What's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with your Week 14 Waiver Wire Pickups. We are 1 week away, Wolfpack, from the fantasy playoffs. You don't need me to spell that out for you, but that means we only have either 1 week left to push ourselves in. So I'll definitely hit some Week 14 guys that could help make that playoff push a reality. And then a lot of you guys tuned in now might be trying to optimize those rosters for Week 14, for those playoff pushes. And I want to make sure you're ready to take down that fantasy title. So thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to break this all down for you and hopefully get you what you need. Again, whether that's a 1 week push, let's go, let's get in, or if that's a playoff, here's who you need at defense. Here's who some handcuffs are. Let's optimize those rosters. Whatever you need as you come in, Wolfpack. That thumbs up button is so greatly appreciated. And just thank you so much for those of you who've been waiting for this show. I know I typically go live Tuesdays at 7 p.m., but loaded show with all the waiver wire prep for the playoffs, all that good stuff. So pushed it back an hour. I'm hoping this is an absolute banger for you. So let's dive right in. So much stuff to get into. Want to make sure to hit it all and to give you plenty of time. It's already 20 questions before we get live. You'll love to see it. Get those questions on in. Please consider that thumbs up button if you enjoy what you're hearing. It does help us get out to more people, especially early on in the show. Thank you again for being here. Let's get right to it, Wolfpack. At the top of my waiver wire list is Zonovan Knight of the Jets. What an incredible 2-week stretch this guy is playing. First of all, 17-plus touches and 100-plus total yards in back-to-back weeks for Zonovan Knight. An amazing start to his NFL career in his first 2 games. He has looked great, too. If you're just going by the eyeball test, he has looked phenomenal, both as a rusher. Last week, 15 carries, 90 yards, in addition to 5 catches and another 28 yards. As a pass catcher, too, getting it done in every single facet of the game. Now, we know Ty Johnson, the majority of those third down snaps, it's not going to be a role that Zonovan Knight comes in and takes over as a 3-down guy. 7 of the 8 third down snaps did go to Ty Johnson. Okay, we get that. But 92% of the snaps within the 10-yard line did go to Zonovan Knight. Now, I know he didn't convert that into a touchdown this week, but that is hugely valuable. In fact, on 65% of the early down snaps he was in. James Robinson, just 11% snaps in the entire game. It was a 2-back committee here, and that is crucial. Now, what happens when Mike Carter comes back? Is he still your number 1 pickup, Wolf? Yes, indeed. Because this week, they have been quoted as saying, even when Zonovan Knight comes back, according to The Athletic, they say Bam, obviously one nickname Bam, great person to have in your lineup, but they say Bam has earned it to be the starting running back even when Michael Carter comes back. In fact, he's earned, quote unquote, a full-time role, one he'll keep even when Michael Carter returns from the ankle injury that knocked him out, given that he's totaled 103 yards, another 18 as a kick returner. This is back-to-back weeks again of over 100 total yards. Love to see that James Robinson wasn't a factor, that this will be at most a 2-back committee, maybe even Knight. Again, a quality receiver, a true 3-down back. Maybe he just takes over the entire share. And don't forget, they have a quality 3 straight top 10 matchups in your fantasy playoffs for running backs. He's already finishing right now as a back-to-back top 20 running back. He legitimately has top 15 rest of season upside, given the matchups, given the workload. I think we see 20-plus touches from here on out with 3 straight matchups when you need them the most. I love Zonovan Knight this week. I love him rest of season. I'm not worried about Michael Carter, who, yes, he's played very well so far this year. I'm not worried about him coming in and taking that work. So go get Zonovan Knight. He's worth all your fab, the number 1 waiver wire claim. Week 14, there's not a guy with higher upside out there other than maybe my number 2 pickup of the week, James Cook. 25% rostered right now. Another guy I think is worth 75% of your fab. Honestly, this late in the year, especially if you're in a playoff push right here, maybe worth all of it. Why not? We only have a few weeks left, and there's very few running backs that are going to match this guy's upside, James Cook. Also, if Zonovan Knight's not out there, I think worth the number 1 claim right here. He just had 14 carries for 64 yards, in addition to the big thing here, 6 catches for 41 additional yards. He out-carried and out-touched Devin Singletary 20-13 touches and outgained him 105-51, doubling up Devin Singletary. And this isn't a surprise. James Cook has been graded higher in all of PFFs, whether it's rushing, receiving, pass blocking. He has been better than Devin Singletary in every single metric and every single grade. He played 32 snaps compared to 33 for Singletary, running more routes, 16 to 13 routes, seeing 6 targets to just 2 for Singletary. We know Singletary has routinely graded out as one of the worst pass-catching backs since he's entered the NFL. So James Cook at least monopolizing that role. We know Nyheim Hines, yes, he was involved, 23 snaps, 11 routes, 2 targets, but he was much more, it seems, to be acquired for special teams, punt returning, kick returning, all those duties. It seems like James Cook is definitely the preferred option on pass-catching snaps and really does have the upside to just take this backfield over. Now, I know Singletary, he's solid, he's trustworthy, he's reliable, dependable, whatever adjective you want to use. The team does like him. I don't think he just goes and disappears, and I think in close games, James Cook might disappear into the background just a little bit more. But again, all the metrics talent-wise suggest James Cook's more explosive. He gives this offense a significantly higher ceiling, and as they get ready for the playoffs, that's something they're going to need. That's something they're going to need to get over that hump of the Kansas City Chiefs. They've been trying so hard to acquire that receiving back, that guy that will push him over the edge. And it seems to me like, yeah, a lot of people worried it's going to be Nyheim Hines once he got traded for. Nope. This game suggests it's definitely James Cook. All he did was reward them. They have 4 tough opponents, top half in terms of fantasy points allowed to running back. So not great matchups here down the stretch, but still, in this offense, I don't think matchups are all that important because touchdowns were always going to be available here. Plus, we know, and this is going out to all you keeper league people out there, Singletary is a free agent next year. We could see James Cook stepping into an every down role as early as next year. I imagine he'd be a high second-round pick, maybe even a low-end first if he enters the offseason as the main guy and they don't make any major moves. That's how much upside James Cook, who shockingly looks very similar to his brother in terms of vision, in terms of burst, in terms of all that great stuff, maybe an even better pass catcher than his brother right there. He looks great. He played in the slot, actually, a decent amount too. So you'll love to see all these things for James Cook. My number 2 pickup out there in most of your leagues should be there. Again, 75% of your fab, maybe all of it. Your number 1 claims, that's what this guy is worth. Go out and get him. And we're at the top. So 3 running backs here to kick off week 14 waiver wire pickups. I think Cam Akers is very, very viable as well. Shockingly, the backfield flipped back into his favor. Maybe it's a game flow thing. Maybe he's out of the doghouse. I don't know exactly what it might be. Shout out to my guy in the YouTube comments who told me this was going to happen. They watched the film and Akers looked better. I talked a little trash, said no way. This thing is flipped. He was right, at least for this week. 17 carries, 60 yards. Again, not overly impressive, but the pair of touchdowns was crucial here. The fact that he played a significantly greater role in this week than Kylan Williams because they were in a closer game. So you got the game with the Raiders coming up, a top 6 matchups for running backs. You got Akers playing 72% of the snaps coming into this one. You ultimately had Kyren Williams, 3 carries, 9 yards, didn't even catch his lone target. Just a complete and utter afterthought here. And I do imagine this could flip, but you look at this, 46 of the 64 snaps going to Akers. That is huge. Almost all the early down work, 38 of the 43 snaps going to him. The goal line and short yardage work was all but 1 snap went to Kyren. All but 1 went to Cam Akers. Just 1 snap went to Kyren Williams, who, yes, he maintained the 2-minute offense. Kyren Williams, all those snaps, all but 1 third down snap for Kyren. So we know it's pretty much a early down rushing back and then a receiving back role, a split like that. But when the game script is positive, and that's not going to happen often. So that's why it's like, I want to hammer Akers, but man, I don't know if they can go all in on this guy. But they do have 3 in the next 4 opponents. Bottom 7 in terms of fantasy points allowed. Great matchups coming up for whoever is the lead back. And it does seem like that is Cam Akers. It seems like he's out of the doghouse. It seems like he's going to be the guy. So he is worthy of a high-end waiver wire claim of about 50% of your fab right now. And of a start, I think, as early as this week on Thursday Night Football, facing a soft Raiders run defense, could easily see Akers getting back into that end zone at least once, maybe even twice. Go out and get Cam Akers if you need running back help. And the other 2 guys, Zonovan Knight and James Cook, are gone. One last running back at the top 4 here that I think has to be owned in nearly all leagues is Jerick McKinnon. 8 carries, 51 yards in the Week 13 loss against the Bengals. Had 2 catches, 9 yards, and a score, finally finding the end zone. Yes, Pacheco, the lead back at this point at 14 carries, 66 yards, but they're playing a near even split, 25 snaps for both of them. More routes for McKinnon, as is always going to be the case. And he has consistently, McKinnon, been the lead snap guy here. He's played plenty of snaps in the red zone all season, even when CEH was healthy. We don't have really anybody else. Ronald Jones, just 3 snaps for him. Useless 3 snaps at that. So it does seem like it is clearly a 2-back committee in the most explosive offense in the league. So what if something happens to Isaiah Pacheco? Not only do you have some nice standalone value with McKinnon in that receiving role, in that red zone role, you also have that handcuff upside. Should something happen to Pacheco, you might be looking at an every down back. It doesn't seem like they trust Ronald Jones to do anything. Sure, he might mix in for a handful of carries, but don't forget, as early as last year, the last couple of weeks, and certainly your fantasy playoffs, and then definitely the real NFL playoffs, McKinnon was averaging 17 fantasy points per game in the NFL playoffs. That was included games with CEH back. He saw 107 snaps, 33 touches compared to just 36 snaps and 17 touches for CEH across that 3-week stretch. They decided to just commit to this guy, Jerick McKinnon, and all he did was reward him. He looks good, too. If you're watching him right now, finding the hole, zipping through it, he always has had that eyeball test passed, for me at least. You guys know I've always loved Jerick McKinnon if you've been here a while, but I love his upside in this offense. Should something happen to Pacheco, plus if you're desperate for a flex, this guy does get enough volume in one of the best offenses in the league to always be viable. Moving our attention to the wide receiver position. It's hideous, it's gross, but Nico Collins seeing 10 targets, hauls in just 3 of them for 35 and a touchdown. That's the issue. The volume is absolutely going to be there. He's led the team in targets for 4 straight weeks now, 10, 7, 9, and 10. Amazing volume, amazing opportunity, 25% or higher share in all 4 of those weeks. Not bad. The issue is that it's pretty hideous. Just last week, 36% of his passes, his targets, were deemed catchable from Kyle Allen. That is bad. So, yeah, volume's nice, but when the aerial pie is made of complete and utter shit, sometimes it doesn't quite matter. He still got there. Again, 3 catches, 35, and a touchdown. It's kind of like a Cortland Sutton light. I mean, just as good as Cortland Sutton at this point. Cortland Sutton, I dropped him in my league. Just wanted to purge myself of all Broncos. Don't mind that move. But ultimately, 549 and a touchdown, 548, 6 for 44, and then 335 and a touchdown. It's viable. It's usable if you're desperate for a wide receiver, because we do have these week 14. That's why I can't just do a playoff-specific show. We have 6 teams on bye in week 14, so we're going to need to plug in some of these creatures, some of these demons, and Nico Collins. If you can bank on 10-ish targets, that's better than most on the waiver wire at this point. So I do like Nico Collins as a pickup, as a fill-in. It seems like Brandon Cooks. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we've seen the last of Brandon Cooks for this season. He seems to be whining about whatever it is at this point. He doesn't want to be on this team. Scott Barrett, talked about this on his pod. He has an inside source for the Texans that talks about how the team absolutely despises Brandon Cooks, how Brandon Cooks absolutely despises the team. It seems like a divorce is coming in the future, and I would not be shocked at all if we do not see him again. I don't think Nico Collins is built to be a wide receiver 1. I mean, he's got the body, he's got the size, he's got all of that. He's just not talented enough. But at this point, he's going to be getting wide receiver 1 volume, so he is worth checking out on the waiver wire. Again, Wolfpack, there's about 20 of you out here. Love it. So greatly appreciated. Whether you're here with us live, whether you're catching the replay, that thumbs up button is so greatly appreciated as we prep you up for week 14 for those playoff pushes. Please do consider helping us with that thumbs up button. Getting us out to more people would be so greatly appreciated. Moving forward to the Jets, got a couple guys for you that we have to consider, in quarterbacks in general. If you lost Lamar Jackson, if you're one of the guys impacted by Justin Fields out in week 14, whatever it might be, you might need a quarterback. In the first position I am looking at, the first guy I'm looking at is Mike White, 18% rostered right now. I've always been a big Mike White guy, and he has not disappointed me quite yet. Now, it was a pretty ugly game, 2 interceptions, but he still racked up 369 yards on 57 pass attempts. And that is what I'm leaning on, folks. In fact, over the last 2 seasons, in games without Zach Wilson, the Jets have led the NFL in both pass attempts, 47.6 per game, and passing yards, 325 per game. More than the Chiefs, more than the Bills, Chargers, but every single offense. Toss them out there. The Jets have had more attempts and more yards in any game started by anybody that's not named Zach Wilson. I really think their play caller, Mike LaFleur, is a really solid guy that is just terrified to take the training wheels off when Zach Wilson is. And who could blame him? You guys have seen the guy play. He is a bag of shit. So when he's got anybody with a mediocre arm, with a mediocre decision making, I shouldn't say mediocre arm. Zach Wilson obviously has the cannon. He just cannot figure out how to be an NFL quarterback. His decision making is pathetic. So when Mike LaFleur has a guy that can just execute those yak opportunities, this 49er style system. That's all he needs to just hurl it out to his guys. We've seen Garrett Wilson emerge as a legitimate wide receiver one these last few weeks. Down the stretch, a wide receiver one, in my opinion, top 12 guy moving forward rest of the season. But Mike White himself should be good enough to be your viable starter, because not only is he throwing a ton, not only is he racking up these passing yards, look at the schedule in your fantasy playoffs. The second easiest behind only Aaron Rodgers. And honestly, I'd rather have Mike White in the way they're airing it out at this point. Week 15, Detroit, most points allowed to quarterbacks. Week 16, Jacksonville, 7th most points. And then you got Seattle, middle of the pack, 15th most points, but not a scary matchup. So really only Buffalo in week 14 this week, 26, but that's not impossible. And you know they're going to need to chuck because Buffalo will put up their points as well. So I am a big fan of Mike White, the first quarterback I am looking to. I'd spend about 20, 25% if I'm quarterback needy. If I need that plug in this week, that is the first guy I look at. Now, if you're just looking for literally a 1 week stopgap, you might even find more upside in Tyler Huntley. He's 0% rostered, of course, right now. And he had a solid day this past weekend, filling in for Lamar Jackson, who suffered a PCL injury. Now, the only reason I wouldn't be higher on him than Mike White is because they're expecting Jackson to be only out about a week. Now, they have labeled it, though, a 1 to 3 week injury. So maybe it does linger. This is a team, though, that needs to be fighting for their playoff lives. I think as soon as Lamar Jackson is even close to ready, he's going to be thrust back in there. I expect we only get about 1 week from Tyler Huntley. But when he plays, you guys have seen his last year. He was very, very solid in fill-in duty last year, averaging over 200 yards through the air, over 60 yards on the ground. And in 2 of his 3 starts, he had top 10 fantasy days. In fact, he was the quarterback one of these weeks with over 40 fantasy points, 2 rushing touchdowns, passing touchdown. He was a beast, and he looked pretty solid in his first fill-in duty, 27 to 32, 187 yards, a pick, but it also that Konami upside yet again, 41 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Just to remind you again of what that start was last year. So he went 14, 15, and 17 were his 3 starts in a row, 24 fantasy points, 40 fantasy points, and then 13.25. A little bit of a dud there, but man, 270 passing yards, touchdown with 45 yards, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, in addition to 215 and 2 through the air. That's the type of upside Tyler Huntley has. He gets the Steeler top 6 matchup this week. Their playoff schedule for quarterbacks is a joke too. So if for whatever reason Lamar Jackson does get an extended absence here, you got Pittsburgh twice in these next 4 weeks. Ooh, baby, that could be juicy as hell for Tyler Huntley. And then Atlanta as well. Just great matchups all around for Tyler Huntley, a talent that we've seen rack up quarterback points. And just continue with the Jets theme. Corey Davis, I know you're probably puking. Maybe you're tuning out at this point just at the sight of his name. As soon as you go to trust him, he's going to probably end your season. So I can't recommend him overly highly, but part of this Mike White experience, an 80 plays run and not even in overtime this last week. That's a lot of goodness here to squeeze. And Corey Davis has been pretty solid. 10 targets this last week, 8 catches on those 10, or 5 catches for 85 yards rather on those 10 targets. He has been the clear, since returning to the lineup, number 2 receiver. We all want it to be Elijah Moore. Kind of led the team in receiving, was looking like a true wide receiver 1 for stretches last year. But it's just not happening right now. Corey Davis playing 43 snaps in week 12 when he returned, compared to 22 for Elijah Moore. 69 snaps this last week compared to 58 for Elijah Moore. So the gap narrowed just a little bit here. It got a little bit closer. But still, Corey Davis seems to be the clear-cut number 2 here. He's been reliable for Mike White in the past. White loved him last year. He seems to like him again this year, including on 4th and 10. A big clutch play, 31-yard gain for Corey Davis. So he goes to him when the going is tough. Yes, this is the Garrett Wilson show. I absolutely believe that. But behind him, maybe Corey Davis, a viable 1 week stream, given that he's got a nice matchup against the Bills where they're going to need to chuck. Bills are surprisingly top 10 in points allowed to wide receivers, even though they've been fairly tough already. And again, mentioned Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle in the fantasy playoffs. So as good as that is for White, it's also good for the weapons here. That's why I think Garrett Wilson will be a genuine top 10 receiver down the stretch here. But also Corey Davis has quality wide receiver 3 potential if he rolls 2. If you're looking for a tight end, a guy that might have been dropped in a bunch of leagues that I hate ever going to Broncos, but Greg Dulcich, 38% rostered. I myself dropped him when I had him, and I might have to be scrambling to get this guy back. 8 targets, 6 catches, 85 yards in the week 13 loss against the Ravens. He had 3 straight duds, and that's what happens when you have to rely on the Broncos offense. It's impossible to project when you actually will want to use these guys. but Dulcich maybe might pull away and be an actual reliable every week guy for you. I can barely say that with a straight face when we're talking about the Broncos, but we got Courtland Sutton banged up right now. I bet you they shut the guy down for the rest of the season. We'll see. The hamstring injury, some people are saying it's day-to-day. Some people are saying it's week-to-week. Who knows? Either way, I want nothing to do with Sutton at this point. I really don't want much to do with Greg Dulcich, but they talked about Hackett lining him up as a wide receiver role. He played over 50% of his snaps out of the slot this last week when they went to multiple tight end sets. I mean, they never asked this guy to block. He's an uber athlete, Greg Dulcich. In fact, he's averaged more air yards than every single tight end other than Kyle Pitts and Travis Kelce since Greg Dulcich came in as a starter. So he is a near every down player that's really only being asked to run routes, to catch the ball. So he has some viability at your tight end position. I've got a couple honorable mentions. If you don't want to go back to the Broncos, I get it. I don't blame you at all. Another wide receiver, another veteran that's just kind of coming out of nowhere to be maybe viable, at least for this week 14. If you got a desperation situation, you need to fill in. You got DJ Chark, 6 targets, 5 catches, and 98 yards, playing 84% of the snaps last week. He's back to a full-time player. He's had 2 top 20 finishes across his last 5 full games. That's really not bad. This guy's a player. I've always liked DJ Chark, and now he's got a near full-time role. The risk is Jameson Williams is getting elevated. He's explosive himself, certainly more explosive than Chark if he has his legs under him. Now, I don't know that they're going to put Jameson Williams out there much this year. They don't have much to gain from it other than getting him a handful of snaps. But now you've got a week 14 shootout versus Minnesota. Top 3 matchup for wide receivers coming up this week. Playoff schedule, yeah, the Jets, not a great matchup in week 15, but then Carolina and Chicago, both very viable spots for DJ Chark. So if he maintains this 80% or so snap roll, clearly a top-end target for Jared Goff. And Goff himself is ascending. If he's somehow out there, I'd have him over Mike White, over some of these other quarterbacks, over Huntley, who we talked about. Certainly would have Jared Goff. He's about 50% roster, though, so didn't want to put him on the list. But DJ Chark, a quality receiver 3-stream against the Vikings this week, and maybe a playoff guy, if you need him down the stretch here, could be viable. Now, which Seahawks running back? This is going to be a question for the waiver wire that we have to try to sift through, if nothing else, because of the matchup against Carolina. Their top 5 play for running backs, a great spot. We saw Joe Mixon put up over 50 points. Now, I don't think anybody from this backfield, if it's not Ken Walker, is capable of such a blow-up. It looks like Ken Walker is likely to miss sometimes. He, quote-unquote, jammed his ankle, and Pete Carroll said, we'll have to see what that means. Thanks, Pete. A lot of good information. Let us know, Coach, when you know a little bit more on the injury. Nothing came out today, so we don't have really any updates yet if Walker's going to miss the game or not. It does seem to suggest he's likely going to miss this one, though. So who comes in? What happened on Sunday? DJ Dallas, 32 snaps, 17 routes, 10 carries, 1 target. Tony Jones, 23 snaps, 13 routes, 7 carries, 4 targets. A pretty gross committee, right? But the thing you got to consider, one, Tony Jones looked like shit per usual. 7 carries, 14 yards, 2 catches, 18 yards, just gross. DJ Dallas was a little more efficient, 10 carries for 37 yards. Despite running more routes, did not have a catch himself. But if one or the other, I'd go DJ Dallas. But here's the deal. I think the real play, if it's going to be Ken Walker, might actually be Travis Homer. He missed this game, but he did practice in full on Friday. He had an illness and a knee injury, though. So thinking that they had a viable backfield room, they didn't make him active on Sunday. That turned out to be a mistake given that DJ Dallas picked up an injury. Tony Jones himself picked up an injury. So they did sign, Wayne Gallman this week to the practice squad. That, again, suggests Walker probably going to miss this one. To me, I think Homer is going to be the first man up, though. Remember, just 2 weeks ago, he caught his first touchdown of the year, 45 yards receiving. He had been well ahead of DJ Dallas, playing 65% of the backup snaps when he was healthy. And Homer, in general, very good pass protector, highly regarded among the team. And if everybody else is out, has the skill set to be a 3-down guy. So I would first look at, it's Tuesday. We don't have a ton of clarity going into waiver wire. I don't think any of these guys are worth more than a 5 to 10% bid. Certainly not blowing your number 1 waiver wire claim on a Seahawk this week. But I wouldn't be shocked at all to see someone like Travis Homer. Again, my favorite of them, I'd probably rank them. Travis Homer, if we knew DJ Dallas was healthy, probably would be number 2 here. But he looked pretty banged up. He was doubtful to return. Came in, but looked gross because they just had nobody else because Tony Jones himself got hurt. To me, it's going to be Travis Homer. I'd bid about $5 on the guy. If you're desperate for a running back flex type of fill-in, I could see 12, 15 touches in a great matchup. Wouldn't be shocked at all, but obviously something you got to track throughout the week, maybe Wayne Gallman emerges as the guy you got to know. So just track the situation. Again, go for Homer today if it's not going to cost you a lot, and then kind of figure it out from there. Now, quick run through of just a handful of honorable mentions. Demarcus Robinson did see 8 targets from Tyler Huntley, 7 catches, 41 yards. Not a massive counting stats day, but other than him, Mark Andrews was the only guy. Devin Duvernay saw 2 targets from Tyler Huntley. Other than that, it was the Robinson and Mark Andrews show. We've talked about Robinson before. Last week, I said he was droppable, only 1 catch. Gross. But he does still have the Steelers twice and Atlanta, 2 top 3 matchups for wide receivers. So Demarcus Robinson, if he continues to be that number 1 wide receiver for Tyler Huntley down the stretch here, certainly at least this week against the Steelers, a top 3 matchup for wide receivers could be very viable. Alec Pierce, 86 yards and a touchdown in week 13, 4 catches, 8 targets. Just love the talent, and I always like to bet on talent this time of year. This is often when rookies will blow up. I don't have a ton of faith, actually 0 faith in Matt Ryan to sustain multiple viable fantasy receivers, but maybe with them nearing just about eliminated from the playoffs at this point, maybe they just give their rookie some extra burn. They got to bye this week, so he won't help you now, but an okay schedule in your fantasy playoffs. I still find it tough to trust, but again, we're talking about honorable mentions here. Daniel Bellinger, 5 catches for a whopping 24 yards. But the big news for the Giants, he was a every down player, 64 of 66 snaps, 33 of 40 routes. Those 5 targets were good for over 20% target share. Vikings and Colts week 16 and 17, good matchups for tight ends in your fantasy playoffs. We could see that role continuing to elevate. But if I'm going to another tight end that's not Greg Dulcich, I actually preferred, my bad if I butcher this name, Chigoziem Okonkwo. 4 catches, 68 yards in the Titans week 13 loss. He now has had 30 or more yards in 5 straight games. What tight ends can you say that about? Very few right now. So very nice streak, 52 just in his first 8 weeks. So he has really come on well in these last 5 games. He has at least 1 big play. This week it was a 41-yard catch, but he's averaging 2.7 yards per route run. That is far and away the most for any tight ends. This is a low-volume pass attack, but they might have just lost Treylon Burks for however long. That looked like a horrible concussion that he had. So I'm guessing he's out at least this next week. It's not a stretch to say Okonkwo would be the number 1 playmaker in this offense. So we're talking about deeper leagues here, but if you're desperate for a tight end, he's a good option, as is Noah Fant. I think he's clearly emerged as not only the number 1 tight end in this offense, Disley, a significant afterthought. I think Noah Fant's the clear-cut number 3 option in the pass game. Of course, he's behind Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but at that point, like after them, there's still some meat on the fantasy bone for him to find. 42 yards and a touchdown this last week. He's an athletic freak. 4 catches, 5 targets. Good quality usage these last 3 weeks. I like Noah Fant as a player, and if he's going to get that type of usage week in and week out, yes, he's behind some huge names, but I really, really like him down the stretch. Alrighty, Wolfpack. That racks up our top 15-ish guys for week 14 specifically. But I know a lot of you might be here specifically for fantasy football playoff prep. So let me get a quick swig of water. If you don't mind hitting that thumbs up button while I do, will be so greatly appreciated with over almost 40 of you here. Love to see it on a Tuesday night. So appreciative that you're spending your Tuesday with me, Wolfpack. Let's get you ready for those playoffs in just a second. So all those guys I mentioned, really the first 3 running backs going again with Cam Akers at 3. You got James Cook at 2 and Zonovan Knight at 1. Those are my top 3 pickups, regardless of where you sit, whether you're playoff bound, you're good to go. I go those guys before anybody. However, let's say you're all set. Those guys are gone, or you don't have the fab to go get them, and you're just trying to optimize your roster for the playoffs. 2 big things you want to look at. First is handcuff running backs, whether you're protecting your own assets or trying to snipe somebody that could emerge as a top 15 running back for your stretch run. Both very viable strategies. And then the second is stockpiling some defenses, getting ready for those guys. We just saw it last week. The Browns had 30 points as a defense. Like, that can happen any given week, trying to set yourself up to hit those spike weeks, whether it's handcuffs, whether it's defenses. That's how you win fantasy championships. So let's say you're sitting pretty, you got the bye lined up. Let's talk about how you can optimize this roster. We'll start first with handcuffs and the backs that you want to get yourself. I can't believe this. Alexander Mattison, 34% rostered. Going into fantasy playoffs, this should be closer to 100% because we've seen it. time and time again how damn good Alexander Mattison is, whether you have Dalvin Cook or whether you just want yourself a potential top 5 running back if something happens to Dalvin Cook, who's missed at least 3 games every single year of his career. Now, this year it probably won't happen, but you never know. We still got 4 games on the year. Who knows? Maybe you get Alexander Mattison your entire playoffs. The last year, just looking at his games without Dalvin Cook, he averaged in those 4 games 22 fantasy points per game. That would have been a top 4 running back on the season. Top 10 over. He was a top 10 running back in 3 of his 4 starts last year. He was over 20 fantasy points in 3 of his 4 starts last year. Never went outside the double digits. So great floor, great ceiling. Alexander Mattison, far and away the number 1 handcuff in all of fantasy. The fact that he's only 34% rostered blows my mind. Make sure you go get Alexander Mattison if he's out there in your leagues. The ultimate bench stash at this point. But slowly below him, just very, very slightly. These are my only 2 tier 1 handcuffs. The guys that I am confident would be top 10 running backs if the starter ahead of them misses time. The next guy would be Khalil Herbert. He'll be coming off the IR after their bye week this week. So the risk is in week 15, you're not going to have him as a starter. We could, as early as week 15, see Mattison as a starter if something happens to Cook week 14. The Bears aren't playing, so there's no real upside to Khalil Herbert this week. But stashing him now, just in case something happens to David Montgomery. We've seen him be a monster. He's got 5 starts under his belt without David Montgomery. He's averaged 17 fantasy points per game. Again, top 10 numbers last year and this year, should that be the case. He has seen 10-plus carries, Khalil Herbert, in 5 times his career, those games we just alluded to. He's been top 12 in 3 of those 5 games, 17 points per game. He'd be on pace for 1,700 rushing yards, 17,000, just smashing world records. Now, 1,710 touchdowns, though. Top 12 numbers across the board should he be the starter. Look no further for league-winning upside than when he filled in for David Montgomery in week, 3? 157 yards, 2 touchdowns, 30 fantasy points. The running back 1 that week. He's now been the running back 40, running back 11, 8, 34, and running back 1 in those games without Montgomery. He averages nearly 5 yards after contact per rush. That's the top in the NFL. Earlier this year, before he went down himself, only Nick Chubb had more runs of 10-plus yards, and Herbert had done it on 30 fewer carries than him. The guy is legitimately good. He's been top 5 in the elusive rating for PFF in back-to-back years. He's just a really nice talent. So Khalil Herbert, if anything happened to Montgomery, a nice playoff schedule. You got the Chargers and the Packers, 2 of the worst run defenses in the league. Definitely a top 10 potential guy should something ever happen to David Montgomery. Now, a lesser-owned handcuff right now, Dontrell Hilliard, only 13%. He's my number 3 handcuff. Not going to be that way on most lists, but this is why I absolutely love Hilliard should something ever happen to Derrick Henry. Look at the playoff schedule. Week 15, Chargers, 4th most points to backs. Week 16, Houston Texans, the most points to running backs. And week 17, Dallas, a tough matchup. But those 2 matchups alone make Hilliard well worth a roster spot in nearly every league, whether you have Henry or not. I know Henry's a tank. And should he stay healthy, he's going to obliterate those 2 defenses. If somehow, after these last 2 pretty paltry weeks for Derrick Henry, you still have a trade option and you can somehow get him at any type of price, he's my number 1 running back the rest of the season, given this schedule. He's going to destroy the you already know what he does against the Texans. He averages nearly 200 yards over the last 2 years against them. But then the Chargers, a really, really bad defense against the run as well. So Henry's probably going to just smash fantasy leagues and be a league winner. But if he did end up missing time for either of those 2 games, Hilliard is definitely the next man up. This was alluded to throughout training camp. The Athletic talking about he's clearly the 2nd best running back on the roster. Good bulk of work if Henry goes down. Other reports saying he regularly made plays in camp. He was leaving no doubt he'd be the next guy, impressed while carrying a heavy workload. They have no issues feeding him. Now, last year, Henry did miss some time. They had Donta Foreman on the roster, who was the main back, and even still in those 7 games without Henry, 3 of those games, we saw Hilliard put up 16 or more fantasy points. The one game he was given the start over Foreman was against the Patriots. What did Hilliard do? 131 yards and a touchdown. Absolutely shredded them. We know he has the receiving role already on lock, so a little bit of handcuff with benefits upside, but you're probably not using. I hope to God if you're making your fantasy playoffs, you're not using Hilliard in any of those spots unless something happens to Henry. And again, I think he'd be the every down back. Dontrell Hilliard, maybe Haskins would mix in for 5 to 10 carries, but he has the clear-cut number 2 role, a very soft schedule, and all Hilliard's ever done when he gets used is impress. He's no Henry, but I think he'd put up about 80% of Henry numbers in the – everybody blasts the Texans. Everybody blasts the Chargers. You don't have to be that good to blast those guys. So those 2 matchups alone make him well worth being rostered. Love Dontrell Hilliard there. Zamir White, my number 4 handcuff of this playoff stretch run. Now, the schedule is gross. You got New England 31st. You got San Fran at the last week, the championship week, 32nd. And you got sandwich in between them, Pittsburgh, 19th. So none of those are great, juicy matchups. But this team is so committed to the run, the Raiders are right now, that I think Zamir White is a genuine talent. And this one's more so, less than where we got Hilliard banking on the schedule. Zamir White, I'd be banking on the talent. One, his nickname's Zeus because of the workout warrior, the absolute freak athlete this guy is. Nobody benches, squat. I mean, freak body, freak speed. And we've seen it on some runs. Just 2 weeks ago, the guy had runs of 17 and 12 yards. Only 2 runs he had. Looked really, really solid. All year, he's been over 4.5 yards per carry on his usage so far in the season. It's just been very minimal because Josh Jacobs is literally the fantasy MVP. He's a monster. But every single week, Josh Jacobs is on the injury report with a calf, hamstring, something. Monster workloads all year. There's a chance he breaks down. There's also a chance with them not picking up his 5th-year option, Jacobs is just kind of like, screw you guys. I got a little thing going on. I'm going to sit this one out. I don't think he's that type of guy. I think he knows he's in part of a special season here, and he's going to keep gutting it out, whatever the injuries report or not, whatever they say. I don't think he's going to just sit to sit. But that's a possibility. And even if not, what if these lingering injuries finally do catch up with him? So Zamir White, just a really solid talent, even with a tough schedule, I think would have genuine top 20 upside anytime out there. But based on schedule and potential usage, I might even like Josh Kelly, my number 5 handcuff, even more than him. We saw, look no further than last year, how valuable the number 2 running back for the Chargers can be. Justin Jackson saw 72% of the snaps, 19 touches, 162 yards, 9 targets, 8 catches, 2 touchdowns, 34.2 fantasy points in week 16. The running back 1 in your fantasy playoffs. That's the stuff fantasy wet dreams are made of, folks. Josh Kelly has been the clear-cut number 2 guy whenever healthy. Look no further than this last week. No one else touched the field at running back other than Xander Horvath, the fullback. Other than that, we saw 46 snaps for Austin Eckler, 31 for Josh Kelly. And before getting hurt for about a month, he was already the clear-cut number 2 guy for Austin Eckler. In fact, this is almost like a 60-40 split without an injury happening. So should something devastating happen to the best player in fantasy right now, Austin Eckler, I think Josh Kelly would walk right into a 20 to 30-point upside type of role. I don't think Kelly's anything that special, but he has looked a lot better this year than what his plodding ass looked like the first 2 couple years. He is a definitely capable receiver too. No, he wouldn't be Austin Eckler, but the schedule is not bad down the stretch, and he'd be stepping into a role that we saw produce the number 1 running back in fantasy, and they didn't just let go because they believed in Josh Kelly more. They didn't even go to re-sign Justin Jackson. So if Justin Jackson can put up 30 points in this offense, I think Josh Kelly sure could too. So he should definitely be on all rosters. I have Eckler in a bunch of leagues, and I'm making sure to have Josh Kelly as a handcuff anywhere I have Eckler. So I've got 2 more guys I really want to highlight and a couple rapid-fire quick names, and then we'll chat some defenses and on to all of your questions, Wolfpack. Jordan Mason. This is like the tier 2 of handcuffs with him, Hilliard, Zamir White, and Kelly. I like all these guys a lot, though, especially Mason. 8 carries, 51 yards, really explosive guy. Crushed it in the preseason, averaging nearly 7 yards a pop there. That's the reason he made this team over some of the higher, Trey Sermon, 2nd-round pick. See ya. Doesn't matter because Jordan Mason was that much more explosive. Now, of course, McCaffrey, over 82% of the snaps this last week, going to likely see the vast majority of the work here down the stretch. I don't think Mason has much standalone value. Well, again, 51 yards this last week. He's got some nice zip to him. But so something happened to CMC. We all know how risky CMC has been these last few years. Workhorse right now, staying healthy. Prayers up. I hope he does. I have an Eckler CMC team. Love it. But if he goes down, it seems like Jordan Mason. We didn't see Tyrion Davis play a single snap. Tevin Coleman hadn't been activated. I think those guys would get involved if CMC missed time, but it seems like Jordan Mason has clearly taken over as the number 2 guy here. And in the fantasy playoffs, Seattle, 2nd most points to backs. Washington, not a great matchup, 29th in week 16. And week 17, the Raiders, 6th most points to backs. So 2 top 6 matchups in your fantasy playoffs. That's why Christian McCaffrey could go nuclear. But if something happens, if devastation strikes, Jordan Mason would be a quality running back too in those two great matchups. And even against Washington, he's got good pass catching chops. I like Jordan Mason a lot. The last guy to highlight here is Jaylen Warren. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, he might have been number 2 on this list, number 3. I love the player. In all efficiency metrics, whether it's as a receiving back or rushing back, he's top 15. Yards per route run, yards after contact, whatever it is you want to go with, he is significantly outpacing Najee Harris, who has looked better these last couple of weeks. I'll give it to him. Steel plates out. He does look better. All that to say, though, I love the player that Jaylen Warren is. The issue I have, and the reason he's not higher, despite the fact I think he has a true 3-down skill set, could be that Tomlin workhorse, is Benny Snell has to just get his ugly ass involved. After he had a good spot fill-in duty when Najee Harris had to leave against the Colts the other week, Benny Snell looks solid, and now you look at this backfield. 44 snaps with the Harris, nearly 70%. He's become the guy again. We do have Warren in that clear 3-down role, a 3rd down role rather. 9 targets 9 routes, only 1 target, but nearly lockstep with Najee Harris on the route running. But Benny Snell mixing in for 9 snaps, mixing in for 6 carries, just 1 for Jaylen Warren. So all this to say, if something does happen to Najee, I think it would end up becoming Benny Snell actually getting the carries here. 15-ish carries, maybe 5 to 6 trickle down to Warren, who would then get the receiving role. But the real value would have been a 3-down monster, which, again, I think he deserves. If we knew that was going to happen, he'd be right up to number 2 or 3 on this list. But I think Benny Snell's ugly ass is going to be involved too much for me to put Warren any higher than 7th on this list. Now, just to rip through a couple fast names here, JaMychal Hasty, also worthy, especially if you have Etienne on your roster, 18% out there. Remember, last time you had to fill in for Etienne, 12 carries, 28, and the big thing, 5 catches, 67, and a touchdown. He just makes really big plays. He's got decent speed, really good shiftiness, breaks a lot of tackles. I really like this JaMychal Hasty kid. I also like Deion Jackson, 8% rostered. His 1 start this year, he was the running back 1. He had 2 starts, rather. He got hurt in the other one, though. Got hurt in both of them. So that's the risk here with Deion Jackson. But let's not forget 12 carries, 42 yards, and a touchdown. In addition to the big thing, 10 targets and 10 catches for 79 yards. He was the running back 1 through 3 quarters of action in that game. So a lot of upside to Deion Jackson. The easiest playoff schedule among all teams for the Colts for running backs. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor should probably go ballistic here down the stretch. But if something happened, Deion Jackson would be walking into a very tasty schedule. Just thinking about that, actually, maybe he belongs over Jaylen Warren. We just talked about would probably be in a committee. I think Deion Jackson would have this largely to himself. Jordan Wilkins maybe mixes it all a little bit. But I like Deion Jackson. Matt Breida behind, we've seen this just a few years ago. He was number 3 in the league in rushing for the first half of the year for the 49ers. Remember that like 5 years ago or so? Breida's got some explosiveness. When he's gotten the ball this year, he's got a couple touchdowns. I mean, I like Breida. I like the player. Should something happen to Barkley, who we know has had injury concerns in the past, Breida would be a 3-down back. They truly have no one else. Was it Gary Brightwell? No. It'd be a Matt Breida show with a pretty ugly schedule, but I like Breida. Again, I look for my handcuffs. Guys that could be genuine 3-down backs for the volume if something happens to the starter. So look for Breida. Look for Boone. Latavius Murray's been gross anyway, so maybe Boone just takes over at some point. 5% rostered, he could be an option. And you see Ingram on there. I'm not talking Mark Ingram, who got hurt on Monday Night Football. I'm talking Keontae Ingram, playing behind James Conner. We know one of the more injury-prone backs in the league. He's already missed time, and we saw Benjamin finish as a top 12 running back in half of his starts this year already. So I think we could see that for Keontae Ingram as well, 3-down guy. He got outshined, obviously, by Bijan Robinson at Texas. But Ingram himself was a solid talent, good churner, nothing special, but can do it all. And so if Connor missed some time, I think he's truly the only man up at this point. So definitely look for Keontae Ingram as well. That, Wolfpack, wraps up my handcuff discussion, all the guys to look for. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that gives you some guys to look for. And again, I would pick up pretty much any of those guys. It's a pretty weak waiver wire in general, other than those 3 top-heavy backs at the top being Zonovan Knight, being, again, Cam Akers, and as well as James Cook. Love those 3 guys at the top. But other than that, especially if there's a Mattison, Khalil Herbert, even Hilliard out there, all deserve roster spots above a lot of the guys I talked about if you don't need a bye-week plug-in for, again, a crazy bye week here. Now, the last thing I want to discuss is your playoff defensive streamers, as well as your week 14 guys. So again, a lot of buys. You might need a week 14 streamer. So let's talk about some of those options this week, as well as looking ahead to who could help you dominate in your fantasy playoffs. So if you're looking at this week, I really like the Cardinals facing the New England Pats. They do have a solid pass rush, these Cardinals do, and they're very opportunistic. Top 10 in run defense, top 10 in fumble recoveries. The really backbone of the New England offense is the run game. So if the Cardinals can just shut that down and they force Mac Jones to take to the air, he's really had one game over 250 pass yards. I think very opportunistic defense. We saw the frustration on Mac Jones's face. And then you got Denver, 32nd offense coming in week 15. So not only do you get a nice matchup for the Cardinals this week, and that's why I wanted to highlight them as my favorite stream this week, they then get Denver coming up in the next one. So I really, really like the Cardinals as a pickup this week. I don't hate the Raiders at all. Getting the Rams, one of the great spots to stream right now. Third most points allowed, 2 defenses on the year, and they're only getting uglier with no more Stafford, Kupp, or Robinson. Yeah, John Wolford, maybe Bryce Perkins. Hopefully it's John Wolford because he's more of a statue behind the pocket, even more sacks. And that's the big thing with the Raiders. 11 sacks across their last 3 games where they've been averaging right around 7 fantasy points per game. Solid spot. And we've got the Rams giving up 42 sacks on the year. That is the second most. This line is absolutely abysmal. It's only getting more banged up. They got 4 sacks against a mediocre Seattle pass rush last week. So I really, really like the Raiders, who also get New England in week 15. So could have a couple quality starts for you in 2 of the next 3 weeks. And then I really want to highlight the Tennessee Titans. The Jags, not a great offense, not an amazing matchup either for defenses, but I really like this Titans defense. I like Vrabel. They've been solid. Yeah, they got blown out by Philly, but almost every team gets blown out by Philly. And so they've averaged 11 points per game in their last 3 home games for Tennessee. And they're pretty bad on the road, just 3 points on the road. We get a nice home game against Jacksonville. The real big reason I want to highlight the Titans, though, in week 16, let's say you got your fantasy bye. You don't have to play in week 15. Then go get the Titans because they get at home the Houston Texans. And that could be a 30-point day, folks. We just saw Cleveland Brown, I think a worse defense than the Titans, put up 30 points on this team. So I am big into the Tennessee Titans this week as a streamer, but especially for your fantasy playoffs. If you need a week 16 plug-in, go get them right now. So those are some week 14 D streamers with some juice. Again, the Cardinals this week, plus you got the week after that, Denver coming to town. You got also the Raiders with a nice matchup this week and next week. So 2 guys, if you know you're going to be playing next week, if you make it in, those are 2 solid options. But if you got a nice option this week and then you know you have a bye coming up, Tennessee Titans couldn't be better. I do have to shout out, of course, though, for your fantasy playoffs, you got to go check, are the Kansas City Chiefs available? They played the Bengals this last week, so they probably dropped in a lot of leagues. They're still 67% roster because the secret's kind of been out on these guys. Their schedule could not be any better for your fantasy playoffs. They've won, just as a streamer, this next week for your Chiefs. They do get the Broncos, which you don't need me to spell out how tasty the Broncos are, the worst offense in the entire league right now, coming this week. Then week 15, again, the Texans. How many times we have to say it? The Texans are the most amazing matchup for your defenses. Then week 16, Seattle, a mediocre matchup, and that's why. Have the Chiefs, have the Titans on your bench, so you can go to the Titans in week 16, and then another matchup, this time at home in your fantasy championship against the Denver Broncos. What could be better than that, folks? That is exactly what your fantasy dreams are made of. So I'm trying. I have the Chiefs in a lot. I picked them up in like week 12 just a few weeks ago, and I've stashed them ever since. They're my go-to. I'm going to be riding them, but I'm also trying to pick up the Titans wherever I can to pair with them and just have a beautiful schedule the rest of the year. That is a great option if you need a defense. If somehow they're out there, go snag them. Now, let's just talk about like week 15. You're looking ahead. You know you're going to get in. You know you're not going to have the bye, though. You're going to have somebody ready for week 15. Here's a couple teams that I like. You obviously want, well, let me just like emphasize one quick thing too. Who does Houston have for the fantasy playoffs? So week 15 is Kansas City. Again, I already talked about them. Week 16, Tennessee, I already talked about them. And then week 17. So let's say you have the Tennessee Titans. Go pick up the Jags too. Yeah, Jacksonville Jaguars in week 17 against the Texans. They're all out there. So Titans and Jags largely available. And again, if you know you have that bye, what better than just starting whoever's facing the Texans rather? Great spot for your defense. But then if you're missing out on them, let's just talk about the other offense that you always want to start a team against. That's the Denver Broncos, the worst scoring offense that we've ever seen. It's abysmal. Again, we mentioned Arizona coming up in week 15, a good play against the Pats this week. Then you got Denver the next week. So that's, again, why I love Arizona if you know you have to play these next couple of weeks. Then you got the Rams in week 16, largely dropped unit, but could put up some great fantasy points at home against this Denver offense. And then you got week 17, Kansas City Chiefs, as mentioned again. That's why we love them so much. Those are two offenses you just want to play against. But let's say none of them are out there. Who do you need for a couple more matchups? Green Bay Packers, over half of leagues, they're out there. Terrible matchups in week 15 and 16. Week 16, 17, rather. Miami and Minnesota. You don't want to play them there, but they do get the Rams on week 15 on Monday Night Football. What better way to send your opponent home than a 20-point defensive effort? Green Bay, they're horrendous against the run, 30th, but they are great against the pass, and they can definitely get after the passer. So as long as they put up points and they force the right script, Green Bay, a great week 15 play, as is the Steelers, who will go to Carolina. Yes, they've been better. They've given up 6.5 points to defenses over their last 4, which is like, okay. They're better with Sam Darnold, but they're still not good. I really like, though, the Minnesota Vikings. They're in a great spot facing Indianapolis, who is second in the league in total turnovers, fumbles, picks, you name it. We just saw Dallas put up, 25 fantasy points against them. Better defense than the Vikings, but this team has been okay. 4th with interceptions, 12 total. 4th in total takeaways with 19. And we know the Colts, actually not the second most, the most giveaways, 26 total in the NFL. So an opportunistic defense, the Vikings in week 15 would get the Colts. In fact, the Colts, I know I gave you the Broncos. I know I gave you the Texans. Obviously, again, the Texans, Titans, and Kansas City, Titans, and Jaguars. Want to keep emphasizing them. But the Colts get Minnesota Vikings, Chargers, and Giants. So all those teams very viable as well. And all decent enough defenses to put up some points against them. So I like that matchup quite a bit as well for the Vikings. And then against the Giants in the next week. So I really like the Vikings in general. And then you get the Packers. Like, they might be going to Jordan Love, who did look good, but Vikings in general, like, if you just need a set and forget, they're about as good as it gets at over 50, under 50% owned right now. And then the other only options, let's say you have the bye week, who you could look for. Chargers have a nice, soft schedule with the Colts and the Rams in their last 2 weeks. They're going to be fighting for their playoff lives. These Chargers are. They haven't been a good defense. In fact, the one time I started them, they got me like -5 points. So that's why they're a little bit lower on this. But with these type of cupcakes, they have the Colts, most giveaways in the league, 26. The Rams, we spelled out how bad they already are right now. If the Chargers have anything, it's both, they can generate pressure. So I think that is a good spot as well. And you got tough matchups for like Dallas, New England, some of your defenses you may have been riding for a while. So this could be a solid option for them. And last but probably least, though, the Dolphins. Tough matchups these next couple of weeks, but then Green Bay and New England, the last 2 weeks of the season, got not the most ideal spot. I'd much rather go with a Titans and Jaguars rotation, week 16, 17, then go to the Dolphins. But if you prefer setting and forgetting, the Vikings are gone, the Chargers are gone. Those are some options as well. And of course, Chiefs, Titans, my favorite stack of all. Arizona, if you're in win now mode these next 2 weeks, great spot. Just to summarize a few of my defensive thoughts. All righty, Wolfpack. That wraps it up. And I know that's a lot of time to spend on fantasy defenses, but I'm telling you, getting ahead on defense has brought me plenty of championships in the past. It is one of the biggest ways to gain an edge on your league mates that are sleeping at the wheel, focused only on this week 14 game. If you have that luxury, a bye is coming, or you at least know you have a playoff berth, and planning ahead, having a couple defenses on the roster, it goes such a long way. So hopefully that time was valuable for you. If you found this valuable so far, please do consider, again, that thumbs up button, replay live with us, whatever it is. It is so helpful for us to get out to more people. Now let's talk about your questions, Wolfpack, and hit the mailbag. What can we do to help you out getting ready for this playoff push? Bulldog, first one to hit the like button. Thank you so much. You're routinely here. It's not unnoticed. It's so greatly appreciated. I'm also seeing a couple new names before we get to all these questions. I do want to emphasize we're 30 away from 3K, Wolfpack. It would be so appreciated if you can help us get to that next level, sub into the show, help us grow, Wolfpack. It'd be so greatly appreciated as we push here for over 3K subs this year. So let's see what we got for you, Bulldog. Jeff Wilson sitting on the bench, as he deserves to now. 60% of the snaps out of nowhere going to Raheem Mostert. 7 carries to just 1 It was gross. I don't think I dropped Jeff for James Cook. It's not unreasonable. You guys know, though, I've always loved Jeff Wilson. I've always had a soft spot. So maybe I'm biased. I just think, like, the guy, Jeff Wilson, running back 6, running back 10, and then 12 points and a half to start his Miami Dolphins career. Looked like a genuine low-end running back 1 the rest of the season. I don't know where this came from. That's the risk. Is like, why did most get this much work? Jeff Wilson did start. He ran a few more routes, but 60% of the snaps went to Mostert. Like, it was completely flipped as to what had become the expectation, what anybody wanted. I have no idea why. We still haven't got an explanation from Mike McDaniels. I'm trust me. I think Jeff Wilson, truther, who has been every league, I've been vehemently eyeballing these newspapers to see what happened here. Why? No answers yet. So if you're not as blinded by Jeff Wilson as me, maybe James Cook does have a little more upside. Honestly, it's a better offense. Dolphins are great too. It's both 2 top 5 units. I'm not giving up on Jeff Wilson yet. Is there anybody else, Bulldog, you can drop for James Cook? Because I want you to have him. I don't want it to come at the expense of Jeff Wilson, though. I think this could flip back into his favor, and we all know too. Raheem Mostert, the sports car, is due for a breakdown at any point. Not hoping for it, not rooting for it, but it could happen. So I'd like to have both of them. If you really trust your gut and you have to drop Wilson to do it, then maybe. But I personally would keep Wilson. Lonnie, didn't see you last week. So, yeah, last week we had to get started early. I had a buddy from out of town visiting one of my childhood friends I hadn't seen since like 5th grade. It was so great to see Zach. But we had to get early, so I had to go pick him up at the airport. So, sorry we missed you, Lomi. I know you're regular. Thoughts about CMC with Jimmy G out? I don't think it hurts him. Like, obviously, it hurts the offense as a whole. So, it hurts CMC a little bit. Touchdown chances might be down. I'll tell you what, I was impressed with Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant. Like, I think Kyle Shanahan's offense, as long as you are like a nice pocket passer, you come from an air raid system and you know how to go through your progressions and you can just deliver an accurate ball and let your weapons do the trick, you're going to be fine. And we saw that with Brock Purdy in his first NFL start, despite being the last pick in the draft. Looked capable. Looked like, I don't think he's going to win anybody a Super Bowl, but he can win you a playoff game when you have this type of defense and these type of weapons. I liked him. I liked what I saw. So I'm not really all that worried, Lomi. Like, if anything, they're going to need him to shoulder more. Look what he just did last week, nearly 30 fantasy points. Most of that came with Jimmy G out. I think the bigger risk is what happens when they're in games that aren't quite as close as this last week. And I know they ran away with it late and CMC was still playing. So maybe he is just the 80% guy the rest of the year. I think I feel really good. I mean, we talked about that playoff schedule, Seattle and the Raiders in 2 of his 3 weeks, 2 top 6 matchups. I feel great about it. I mean, we know that Purdy can just check it down and get it to him, and he often did. So I have no issues. I feel as good, maybe weirdly a little bit better about CMC. Well, I think it's more checkdowns. Love me. Any thoughts about the Rams running back room? Yeah, we talked about Akers earlier, right? I'd rather have Akers than Kyren. And again, shout out my guys. I see you in the comments here. Jonas Perry, you commented on it, and I told you I'd shout you out if you're here. You're here. You questioned my take, saying Kyren was the better guy, and it was only 1 week, but I think it was a pretty clear, emphatic 72% of snaps for Akers, almost all 90% of the early work, all the goal line work. If it's all a game flow thing, though, that's my one thing here is the Rams suck. And I think more often than not, we're going to have the script for Kyren to be in catch-up mode. But if I had to have one, it would definitely be Akers at this point because they have 3 of their next 4 matchups against very, very soft rushing defenses. And their lead rusher is very, very clearly right now Cam Akers. So I've dropped Kyren for Akers at this point. And honestly, I dropped Kyren for most of the running backs I talked about tonight, most of the handcuffs I talked about tonight. I don't think Kyren's going to come into any sudden crazy value. The one reason I was stashing was like, maybe this is a lost season and they're turning over the keys and they just want to see what they have in this rookie. And this week was clearly a reminder that's not happening. So glad you caught us this week, Lomi. Great to see you. My man, Jeff Lee. Great meeting you on Sunday, Jeff. Thank you for that call in. It's great to always see your guys' faces and talk to you. Soon enough, hopefully it's face-to-face actually with a lot of you guys. And if you're local, we'll be live at Old Planners on Saturday. Not this week, but the week after for the Saturday football kickoff, your fantasy playoff kickoff. We'll be live at a local brewery. If you're in the North Shore of Massachusetts area, get your ass to Old Planners Saturday at 11 a.m. We'll be going live. It'd be so cool to meet any of you that are local. We'll have a great local crowd of a lot of my friends and family and all that. It's so appreciated, but I'd love to meet some of you guys out there that tune in week out. If you're local enough to get there, oh, it'd be so cool. But Jeff Lee, let's get back to your question. Thumbs up for the RSJ team. Thank you, brother. Would you drop Baby G Davis for Isaiah? No. I know you're so sick of him. I've seen your comments about Gabe Davis, but I can't drop him for McKenzie. Josh Allen's made a couple throws where it's like the arm's not an issue at all. I mean, the first throw he made after the injury was like a 70-yard rope down the field. I'm not too worried about it. If there's one I want on my team, it's definitely Gabe Davis. Like McKenzie, he's looked okay in just short field, and he's intermediate, and it's maybe nicer to have a higher volume weapon, but Gabe Davis can just, again, put up 30 points. There's so few people in fantasy that have genuine 30-point ceilings. So if it's one or the other for me, it's certainly Gabe Davis. And if you drop him, your opponent picks him up, plays you in week 16, week 17, your fantasy championship. You go against Davis, and he puts up 40 against you and says, "Screw you for dropping me, Jeff." Either way, like if you want McKenzie, fine. Don't drop Gabe Davis because he will come back to spite you. Lomi, a lot of good questions tonight. I like to see it. Looking to add a good bench receiver off waivers. Should I drop D Bell? Yeah. Why hold on to D Bell? Oh man, you're in a deep league here, huh? Is this Dynasty? So if it's Dynasty, I would not drop D Bell. But if this is just a redraft here, this is deep. I mean, I don't love any of these guys, but I'm intrigued by Hodgins. A touchdown. I loved what I saw in the preseason from him. I wasn't even on the Giants at that time, but the guy seems to make plays whenever he gets used. Giants need playmakers real bad right now. So of all these guys, like Julio, maybe. I'd kind of rather see like the untapped upside right now of Hodgins and what that does. I don't want anything to do with Marshall, with Darnold. That's never been a thing. But when you have, Higgins, AJ Brown, like you're probably okay. But Cobb, useless. Like I don't think you need Cobb or Bell. So yeah, I guess I'd give Hodgins a roll. But I would go back and watch some of the stream and see if any of those receivers are out there first. I do think Schultz, as you mentioned, Lomi, is definitely more viable in close games just because that's when they're throwing more often, right? And he's the clear-cut number 2. Well, Gallup is starting to ascend back to that role. He did have a 15-yard touchdown nearly completed last week, and otherwise we'd have no concerns here. I think he's definitely still a tight end 1, just given how bad the position is. I mean, you got Kelsey, you got Andrews. And then what else do we have that we can actually genuinely rely on? Schultz is right there in the top 3, 4, 5. Even Kittle, like terrible. So, yeah, I think he's definitely a tight end 1 moving forward. And last question from Lomi. Out of the flex this week, full PPR, would you rather play L. Murray, K. Williams, or Jerry Jeudy? Probably Latavius. Got 17 to 20 touches a week. Chiefs defense is very vulnerable to every position, including running backs. Jeudy very much intrigues me, though. It's not Kyron Williams. He's my least favorite. Cross him out. Jeudy is pretty intriguing because Sutton's likely to miss it. He did have, 6 catches last week? And full PPR, that goes a long way, too. And Boone might get his role. I kind of like Jeudy here, actually, because they're going to be chasing points, Lomi. But relying on Broncos in general is just so sickening. So, but I'd go Jeudy of those 3 options. Oh, my man Campanelli, I just saw your comment. It reminded me. I did not call in to the stream. You're still tuned in, brother. I know some of you guys like to call in and chat with the Wolf. I just talked about Jeff Lee calling in, and I didn't even put the call-in link. So if you want to call in, that link is now up. We'll be happy to have you cut the line, or if you want to show your support for the show, that super chat button is a great way, but a nice free way to support the show is that thumbs up button, shares, likes, retweets, all that good stuff is so greatly appreciated. And not even a second later, he was waiting for it. My man, David Campanelli. What's going on, brother? How are you?
Not much, Wolf. How you doing today?
Very good. Very good.
So I'm kind of in a bind. I made the playoffs, but I'm fighting for seeding now. And I'm driving myself bonkers trying to figure out if I drop Zay Jones for the Eagles defense because I already have the Steelers. And it looks like the Steelers have decent matchups also through the playoffs.
Now, when you say you're fighting for seeding, do you have any shot at a bye, or is it just 4th seed versus 5th seed?
I'm in 5th right now. If I win based on points, I can get 3rd. So I'm not getting a bye.
You're not getting a bye. So this week, honestly, doesn't really matter. I mean, As long as you can't lose it. Like you said, there's no chance of losing it. You're in the playoffs no matter what.
Yeah.
So you're really playing for weeks 15, 16, and 17 at this point. So let's see what the Eagles have. I mean, the Eagles are a great spot this week. Giants, good matchup. Chicago, week 15 is like Hurts puts up his points, but he definitely turns the rock over. So that's a pretty good spot too. I mean, I'm surprised the Eagles are even out there. You do also get New Orleans in week 17. That's a great spot. So I do think the Eagles should probably be rostered to play them this week, to play them next week, and week 17. Now you're going to need a week 16 option, assuming you move on in week 15. And that's where Tennessee Titans would be beautiful. You got them at home. You got the Texans rolling in. I don't know if they're out there in your league, but I think you could probably make it through the rest of the year, assuming the Chiefs are gone at this point.
In this league, yes.
Okay.
In my other league, I actually just put in a claim for the Chiefs.
Yeah, go get them. I mean, again, I cannot emphasize enough. They're the best playoff team. But again, pairing them with the Titans. I want the Titans on my team because I want that 16 matchup against the Texans. It's probably 25 points. We just saw the Browns do it. So I think pairing the Eagles with the Titans is probably your play the rest of the year. As you mentioned, Steelers do have a couple nice matchups as well, but I prefer the Eagles defense in general. They've been just a better defense. Watt's kind of banged up, so if he gets shut down, we've seen how bad Pittsburgh can get. So I don't know that I like 10-2, 10-4. They've been very boomer bust. So I don't know that I want to rely on them. They do have, again, Carolina. That's pretty good. Then you got the Raiders in week 16. That's not bad either. But if you can have the Eagles and the Titans, I think that gives you a really nice 1-2 punch.
Awesome. And then in full PPR, I'm fighting to get into the playoffs. Would you go DeMarcus Robinson or Michael Gallup?
Ooh, you got a nice matchup for Robinson. You got the target share last week. They like to throw it with Huntley. But Gallup coming off a 2-touchdown day. Who do the Cowboys have this next week?
Oh, that's a good one. Let me pull it up.
I got it. I can look it up too. I didn't know if you just had it right. They get Houston, which is a pound the rock type of day. But I don't know. I feel like Gallup coming off a 16-point day, 8 points the week before that in half PPR. I feel like that's the play. He seems to really be rounding into form. 7 and 8 targets, 7 or more in 3 of his last 4 weeks. I probably go Gallup. I like the talent better. I like the offense better. Even though Robinson could be the number one, you just saw it like 2 weeks ago. I think when you used him, right? Like he had 1 catch, 2 catch.
Guys and now Huntley, it looks like he's getting scripted back into everything.
It does. It was 1 week though. Just like before the week you used him, it looked like he was going to be the guy. I think there's a much bigger risk he completely disappears and bombs on you than Gallup, who we know is going to get 6, 7, 8 targets in a much better offense. So I go Gallup there.
Thanks, Wolf. Have a great one. Like, comment, subscribe.
Cheers.
Let's go. 3K on the way.
Hell yeah. We'll get there by the end of the year, baby. Thanks again.
Let's go.
Being here, Campanelli. Cheers. All righty. What else do we got for the Wolfpack out here? Nikolai. Yep, that's where we left off. I have Pirine, and I'm wondering if I should drop him. No. Don't drop Pirine. I mean, we just saw the upside. If Mixon takes 1 bad hit and is out for another couple weeks, Pirine is unbelievable as a handcuff. So I gave you those handcuff rankings. I should have prefaced it at the top. Like, obviously, A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt, and now Samaje Pirine, honestly, in that conversation. They're all 70% or more rostered. But those are like the elite of the elite handcuffs. We've seen Pirine be a genuine top 10 running back-to-back weeks. You can't drop that, Nicola. I would rather have Pirine than Mattison. I mean, if there's someone else you can drop to get Cook, I would. I have no interest in Dallas or Cam Akers. But if you're looking at the long haul, I would definitely keep Pirine just in case again. We've just seen how good that upside is. And if you don't need to use – I would see, is there any other one you can drop to get Cook or Mattison? Like, I would love to have all 3 of those guys on a roster, Nicola. But I'm not dropping Pirine for any of them. I would keep him over any of those options. But is there anyone else you can drop for Cook or Mattison? Do you have a third quarterback, a second quarterback even that you don't need? That's what I'd consider. Thank you, Campanelli. Reminder, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that. Blast us to the moon, baby. Continue to grow the pack. So greatly appreciated. And so true. Please do consider that thumbs up, that sub button, all that good stuff. Is Zeke Elliott a must start over Jamal Williams? Rushing yard with that Houston matchup? Honestly, yeah. it does seem like Swift's kind of taken back over some of that backfield too, right? Tien, Ramondre, D Swift, Wilson. I got to bench Wilson here. It pains me to say it. You know how much I love him, but with the takeover for most of this last week, he makes me real nervous. Godwin, Hollywood, or Debo? I think I'm going to go Godwin, and Godwin's the lock. I don't know about Debo versus Hollywood. Debo did see, 9 catches this last week. He was okay. I'd probably go Hollywood, though. He saw more targets than Hopkins his first game back. He's been real good with this team. So I'm going Godwin, Hollywood. I think James Cook, the move, or was it one-off? 11-2. I love to hear that. Chris, it is playoff season, baby. I don't know who you'd have to drop for James Cook, but absolutely I think he's a great play. He's my number 2 pickup of the week, right? I love James Cook. I'm very intrigued to see what he does down the stretch. His offense is clearly better with him, so they're going to continue to elevate that role. Playoff season, baby, indeed. Need a QB streamer. Watson, Mike White, or Huntley. Daniel, I am deciding the same exact thing. I currently have Watson on my team. Pat Mahomes just struggled to get it done against them, and Watson looked like shit. I am pretty nervous to put my hopes on Deshaun Watson this week. I honestly want to go Mike White because you get the playoff bonus too. But if it's just truly a 1-week streamer, because for me, I have Justin Fields, and I just need 1 week. I think I'm going to Huntley. Good matchup. Seen him do it before. I feel like Huntley for 1 week. How crazy is that? I'm rating Huntley over Deshaun Watson for a week of rental. But I just don't trust Watson yet, and certainly not in a tough matchup. Since he hasn't given up a touchdown in the second half, I think maybe one to the Chiefs last week was the first time they've given up a second half touchdown since week 2. And they're a good defense. I kind of like long term, if you need somebody from this weekend on, I like Mike White because of that playoff schedule. But if it's truly, if you're in my situation, you just have Justin Fields, you're waiting for him, I go Huntley. And if you have Lamar and you're just waiting for Lamar, I go Huntley. Tien again. Do I dare trust? I don't think I trust Njoku. And I don't love trusting Dulcich either, but that's going to be tough. We don't even know Njoku's playing. So I guess you got to get Dulcich to at least have a backup. Smash thumbs up for the RSJ team. Thank you, Jeff Lee. You're a legend. Stephen Aborn, if you're right about Zonovan, I'm a God King. Hopefully you're a God King then. I really love this guy. Number 1 pickup of the week. I'm in there. Lobo, Raheem versus Chargers. Or Rashad versus San Fran. K. Pensas. Gracias. Thank you, Thomas. I mean, San Fran is a brutal matchup for backs, but we've seen how involved Rachaad White is in the passing game. Caught that game-winning touchdown and gained some more faith from his team. He was in there for that drive, too. You love to see it. Think I'm leaning. I love the matchup against the Chargers. If I had to make the decision today, Tomas, I'm going Rashad. But this is one I want to keep gathering info. Does something come out about why Mostert was in? Is Jeff Wilson going to reclaim it? I need a little more info before I can confidently be it's Rashad. Because if we get word that Raheem is going to be the guy, the starter, and see 70% of the work against the Chargers, bam, that's the play. Soft matchup. That would be the guy. But as of right now, I still think it's closer to 50-50. If not, Jeff Wilson just comes back and takes it. It's a risky backfield. Right now, Rashad seems like the safer option. The guy that lost his burst. Yeah, there you go, Jonas. I'm probably referring to Kyron. I'm not even sure. But hey, Wolf, what's up, Magic Mike? Hope you're well, brother. What are your thoughts on the Tampa backfield? It looks like White's the guy, doesn't it? I didn't dive into the snap share from last night. I meant to today, but I just have this obviously a lot to plan for with this show with all the playoff stuff we wanted to go. So I got to dive a little bit more into it. You know who I recommend is Nathan Janke for PFF. I'm going to search it right now. Bucks, Saints. He's one of the best. He does all the snap counts, breaks down why, what the takeaways might be. So Tampa Bay rotation. So they rotated drives, it looks like. Fournette actually played 48 snaps compared to 33 for White. I don't like that. White did catch the game winner, but, 9 carries to 10 carries, 32 routes for Fournette. Ooh, this is uglier than I expected. Oh, man. Thomas, now I'm maybe I do go Rachaad White. I didn't realize. I go Raheem Mostert if you're still there, Thomas. Because this got ugly. Fournette, I didn't realize Fournette outsnapped him, out-carried him. I fell asleep during the game, to be honest. So, yeah, this is ugly. I mean, they might both be unplayable, certainly against a San Fran defense. Like, I don't want to trust them this week. Yeah, this is ugly. In a bad matchup, even uglier. George Kittle and Debo, yeah, they are brutal, Jared. I mean, and now you got Purdy. Who knows if it's ever going to get better? I doubt it. Knight is still available. Go get him. I go Knight, Daniel. My number 1 pickup of the week. James Cook, number 2. But Knight's definitely my number 1. Who would you play in your flex? White, Foreman, or Hollywood? Nicola. Not Dobbins. Not trusting him. Not trusting White after what we just saw. Foreman's very game flow. And they get the Seahawks giving up the second most points to backs. I like that. Yeah. Carroll does love Homer, Jonas. And you know why? He's a great pass protector. That goes such a long way, especially with like a hard-nosed coach like Pete Carroll. I think Homer's definitely going to be in play this week, which is wild. Fantasy championship on the line, like playoff berth on the line. Who better than Travis Homer to have your faith in? But yeah, he really does. You're right. Eagles or Chiefs D? I go Chiefs just because, well, one, you got Houston, right? Or Denver or Houston, one or the other this week. And yeah, so I think it's Denver this week and then Houston the next. So Chiefs set you up so well for the playoffs. I think Eagles are probably a more talented unit. Their playoff schedule, we just talked about it with David on the call-in. Like, good. But Chiefs is just a glorious schedule. Like I said, I'm trying to get Chiefs, Titans, playoff schedules locked. And that's it. That's all I have to think of. Should I drop J-Rob? Oh, yeah, Kyle. No reason. What, 11% snaps when Michael Carter's out? How does he ever get better? So, yeah, absolutely. What's up, Jeremiah? Another call-in for tonight. How are we doing tonight, brother?
Well, that was really quick. You got me on there like right away. All right.
Oh, yeah. Collins always get the jump. Absolutely.
I have a tight end question.
Yes.
I have Goddard on my IR, and he's expected. Well, the latest news says that he's expected back in week 15. So it's basically like I need a 1-week streamer at this point. So would you stream Hunter Henry, or would you try to pick up Dulcich?
Ooh, good question. And the reason it's a really good question is Henry gets Arizona this week, who has been historically bad against tight ends. I feel safer about Dulcich as a whole, but for just 1 week, I think I'd go Hunter Henry. I really, really like him as a stream this week.
Yeah. What's going on?
The future member of the Wolfpack over there.
Yeah.
Although the answer is not ringing true for Hunter Henry, so maybe not. Hello.
Yeah.
But I go Hunter Henry for a 1-week rental, especially because Jacoby Myers might also be out this week. So
Okay.
awesome, Jeremiah. Well, great to see you, brother. Thanks for the call in.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. All righty. Yeah, Justine, I'm glad you didn't listen too. That was not a good play last week. I did not. Obviously, I'm blinded by my Jeff Wilson love, but not a good play at all. I'm glad you didn't listen to. I wish I didn't listen to myself for that one, at least. Still won, thank God. Great show. Thank you, Jonas. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm glad you were able to make it. Number 1, waiver wire claim, Baker Mayfield. Ew. I wish I had you live for that one, Jeremiah, so I could blast you for that. Terrible. Ew. And I know you're joking. Pretty bad one, though. He's so bad. Oh, my God. I hate Baker Mayfield. Brunel Jacobs. How much fab should I put on James Cook? I don't think it's a lot because how much more do you have and how much longer is the season? Like I said, 75% or so. Maybe all of it. Like, who else is going to really emerge? And especially if it's like, maybe this is your last hurrah. I don't know. But yeah, I think he's worth 75% or so of the fab. Drop 1 to pick up the Titans defense. Mattison or Mason? Oh, they're both good handcuffs. Gun to my head, I dropped Mason just because we've seen Mattison top 5 running back upside. I don't know that Mason would ever hit that, even with a good schedule, though. Knows the 49ers defensive weaknesses. Who, Mike McDaniels? I guess. I don't know what you're talking about, Jonas. Let me know. Happy to respond to another banger of a show. Wolf, everyone, like, comment, subscribe. Let's help grow the pack. RJ, break the 3K. Thank you, David, for the hype, as always, brother. So greatly appreciate it. So true. Please do consider that thumbs up button, Wolf back. And if you're new, a lot of new names like you, Jeff Johnson. Hopefully you can subscribe. Come back for future shows. We're live 4 times a week answering your questions, baby. Who to flex? Hollywood, Palmer, Pickens, White. Obviously, we need more info here. If Williams is out, I just keep going to the Palmer well. And it hasn't been blow up, but it hasn't really hurt yet either. But I do also really like Hollywood if Williams is back. Drop Kyron for Michael Gallup. I think so, Brunel. I just don't see much value for Kyron. So if Gallup's out there, sure. Yeah. Better start Huntley, Mike White, or Danny Jones for Giuseppe, who has Fields on bye. I think so. It's a 1 week rental we're looking at. I kind of like Huntley for a 1 week, but Mike White, the next one up there. Better pick up DJ Dallas, James Cook, or Zonovan. I'm going Zonovan for sure, Giuseppe. James Cook would be the next. DJ Dallas, no thank you. But those are my top 2 picks of the week, Zonovan and then James Cook. Love them both. Better D. Kansas City, 110%. For your fantasy playoffs, you need Kansas City. Pierce and the shitty Texans offense, plus Rashad White's timeshare scary. Yeah, that is scary, man. Number 1 seed. So hopefully you can find a couple. Like this is Y2J. You better stock up some handcuffs. I don't know if you were here earlier. Talked through about 12 handcuffs that are out there in most leagues. Pick them up because you might need a new starting running back by the time the playoffs hit. And maybe you can get lucky. I mean, obviously, James Cook, Zonovan Knight, I'd have just as high as any of those guys you talk about. But I would pick up, Mattison. Just rewind it. We talked about all like 12 handcuffs. We have Khalil Herbert, Try to get yourself some bench plays for that bye week and see what can happen. Because, I hope Pierce does not cost you the title. He's so damn good, too. It's just a pain in the ass if the offense is that bad. ETN does have a tough playoff schedule. That is brutal, huh? I would go get Knight. I would see how ETN comes around this next week. 80% of the snaps is really nice. I think 88% actually. But I mean, Knight is just producing and producing and producing. And then 3 top 10 matchups in your playoffs, that might be the play. Just kind of has that feel of the winner, doesn't he, Daniel? So yeah, I'd go get Knight. I really would. Start 1, Collins, Gallup, McKenzie, or Davis for grind don't stop. I'm probably going Gallup there for the touchdown upside. Would you drop Hunt for James Cook or Pacheco? For Pacheco, I think, honestly. They've got the 3rd best playoff schedule for running backs, and he's clear-cut goal line back, early guy back. Yeah. White, Palmer, Pickens, flex 1. I'm going Palmer there, assuming Mike Williams is out. Locked up playoff spot. There we go. 2 leagues got a win to get in. Let's go. Let's go, Kyle. My man Tunes. Out in 1. So, yeah, as long as we get those wins this week, let's get them, baby. Better stash through week 16. P. Ryan or White? I think P. Ryan, honestly. Because with Fournette coming back and taking more snaps, more carries, like that's nerve-wracking. And we've seen P. Ryan be a top 10 back-to-back weeks now. That's crazy. Mike White or Goff? I kind of like Goff here. Safer. And that Bills matchup. I mean, what if White gets benched mid-game, Would you consider Olave a must-start? No, I wouldn't because of the bad offense. Like, I was getting like White, Olave versus Watson questions. Like, Olave's done it longer, so maybe him. Watson's the must-start, I'm going Bam Knight over Ayuk for sure. Grind. Stream Goff or Tannehill? Definitely Goff, Ben. Definitely Goff. Yeah, same situation waiting for Fields. Yeah, so we are in the same boat. So I like Huntley, but I'm not worried about the Steelers. No, I'm not. If I have the playoffs locked up, should I prioritize Chiefs D or Knight? Can you do both, Ben? I mean, Knight is probably the more valuable asset just because if Walker's out, he's looking like a nice fill-in running back. And that's very rare to find. But, man, that Chiefs D is in such a good spot. So, both. But if it's one or the other, I'd probably go Knight. Unless you already have a good fill-in. Like, if you don't need Knight, then go D because the defense is – Kansas City D is going to win titles this year. But I most cases, like if you're going to rely on Knight, if Walker's going to be hurt, because none of us have the details here. What if he's shut down? Who's your next man up? And if it's not a great option, then Knight's probably the better option. Week 17 Ds. No Kansas City. But thoughts on Chargers at Denver? Chargers don't get Denver in week 16 or 17. That might be week 16, Charlie. The Chiefs get Denver. The Chargers do have a good matchup. We talked about it earlier. I forget who it was, but I go probably, I forget who the Chargers play. It's not Denver though. So I'm going whoever's facing the Jags. I do like Indy at home. I mean, Giants at home versus Indy though. That's pretty good too. I would probably go Jags versus Houston. Godwin, ETN, or Zay Jones. I'm going to go Godwin there. No, Zay Jones isn't even the question, Marcos Valdos. I'm going Hollywood Brown, Nicola. I can do both. Yeah, go for both. But if you need Knight to fill in for Walker, if Walker's out for a while, Ben, then definitely prioritize him. I have Dolphins and Jets D. Cardinals, Vikings, Steelers, Raiders, and Bengals are available. I would go. So we did a whole freaking 10 minutes on defenses. So go watch that, Brunel. But I really like the Cardinals for these next 2 weeks. And then I like the Titans in week 16. Rams, okay. And the Chargers get a nice matchup too before that. So I think I'm going Chargers. Although they've really forsaken me a couple times this year. I don't know, Charlie. Chiefs are gone. That sucks. I think anybody against Houston's very, very viable. So I go Jags. Wolfpack, thank you so much. Great interaction. Awesome show. Hopefully this helped you get ready for that playoff push, whether you need the win this week in week 14, whether you need the push later on because you already have the bye, whatever it might be. So greatly appreciate it. On that way out, replay, live, whatever you are with us, that thumbs up would be so appreciated. Some new names, Brunel, a bunch of you guys that are new here. Please do consider subscribing. Help them push us towards that 3K, baby. Would be so appreciated to get there. You guys are the best. No worries, Jeremiah. It was great to see the baby. Future Wolf coming into the pack. You can find all our content, my rankings, so many great articles, so many stock watches at RiverStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Let's get it, Wolf Pack. Week 14. The Wolf of Fantasy Sheep be the Wolf guys. Later.